everybody, it's AT. I appreciate you checking out this Aaron Torres Pod YouTube bonus clip. In just one moment, we are going to do a live reaction to the breaking news as the number one quarterback in America, Dylan Raiola, has flipped from Georgia to Nebraska. It was expected, but it is still here, and it is a shocker. Live reaction off the top of the head, no notes. We're going to get to it momentarily. Before we do, though, do me a quick favor. Make sure to click subscribe here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. We just passed 31,000 subscribers. Cannot thank you all enough for your support, but we cannot do it without all of you. Need you to subscribe. If you're not subscribed already, we just crossed 31K. I think we can get to 35K before the new year. Need your support, though. Make sure to subscribe. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into the news of the day on Monday that we both expected for about the last 4 or 5 days. And of course, it still feels a little bit shocking as far as I'm concerned. Nebraska fans, you may disagree, but it involves Dylan Raiola, the number one quarterback in high school football. Unless you've been living under a rock, this is a kid that has been committed to Georgia since May. Actually moved to Georgia to play his senior year of high school football, and everything seemed to be trending towards Georgia right up until last Monday when Steve Wiltfong, the top recruiting insider in America, basically put in a crystal ball that said, no. I think he's going to Nebraska. And once that happened, it set the internet ablaze, and we have talked about it nonstop. Dylan Raiola took a visit to Nebraska this weekend. He was seen at the Nebraska wrestling meet. And sure enough, on Monday, the news becomes official as Dylan Raiola flips from Georgia to Nebraska. Let me say this, okay? By the way, first of all, for people who are like, oh, Torres is a Nebraska homer, he's wearing a Nebraska shirt. It's actually a Jerry Tarkanian shirt, so I ain't a Nebraska guy. But as a fan of college football, I think this is so cool. I think it's so awesome, and I am so fired up to just talk about it here for just a few minutes, okay? So first of all, as I said, this is both shocking and it isn't shocking. Why it's not shocking is because for the last week, everything has trended this direction. Steve Wiltfong puts in his crystal ball. All the other recruiting experts are basically saying that Nebraska's in the mix. Nebraska's going to get a visit. Then, as we talked about over the weekend, the most important thing was Nebraska did get the visit. Sometimes a kid gets cold feet. He has second thoughts. He has questions. But once he stepped on campus, I was like, oh my goodness, this thing is going to happen. And that's exactly what happened here over the last 24 to 48 hours. Again, by the way, I'm off the top of my head. Forgive me, whatever. I bring it up because it wasn't shocking. Everything has been trending this way for a week. For people who do not know, Dylan Raiola's father is a Nebraska legend. Early in his recruitment, Nebraska was thought to be a factor. Then they weren't. Then he committed to Ohio State. Then he decommitted, goes to Georgia. But at the same time, it still is a shock. Even with the family ties, even with the visit, I cannot believe this officially happened. Because even Nebraska fans, and I've seen your comments on YouTube, I've seen your comments on Twitter, I think even Nebraska fans in their heart of hearts didn't want to get their hopes too high. Because at the end of the day, Nebraska has dealt with a lot of heartbreak, a lot of pain over the last couple decades. You do not need me to revisit it all, but they've had their hopes dashed. And by the way, once it started trending that Dylan Raiola was coming to Nebraska, all of a sudden the other dominoes started falling the other direction. Kyle McCord says, I'm good. I was thinking about coming, but I'm going to go ahead and look at other options. He ends up at Syracuse. You have the other kid committed in the class of 2024 that plans on taking a visit to Michigan State. As I record, he's still committed. But I even had Nebraska fans saying, listen, I know this is probably going to happen. I know it's 99.9%. I don't think he'd visit if he wasn't serious, but until that pen is to paper or until it's official, I'm nervous. I'm worried. And so I look at this, it has happened. He will sign on Wednesday. I cannot talk about how big this is for Nebraska and for college football. Also, okay, so let me start with Nebraska. Again, all off the top of my head. Sorry to keep saying that. From the Nebraska perspective, listen, I can't talk about how big this is. Listen, unless you saw Nebraska at its peak, unless you saw Nebraska in its greatness. When I grew up as a college football fan, my earliest memories of college football are Nebraska steamrolling everybody. 3 national championships in 4 years. We know the history of the 90s and before. This is one of the great fan bases in college football. This is one of the great fan bases anywhere in sports. We know about the sellout streak. We know about the fan interest. I've said it before. I've been to Nebraska. You go to a lot of these great football communities, these great football states, people are divided. Alabama, people love Alabama and Auburn. In Georgia, they love Georgia, and I guess to a small degree, Georgia Tech. Florida is a Florida State, Miami kind of state. In Nebraska, you go into every gas station, every store. It's Nebraska red. It's the Cornhuskers. It's that Block N. It matters. It means so much. And I've said it all along. I've said I still believe, and I know that there's people that think, certain programs will never get back to where they are. And what I always say, it only takes the right coach. I'm old enough to remember when I was told that Notre Dame would never be relevant nationally again. Then they hired Brian Kelly. They played for a national championship. They make a couple college football playoffs in the 4-team era. And all of a sudden you realize the right guy was there. Kentucky basketball after Billy Gillispie. There's no way they're not going to be the same. It's a new sport. Then John Calipari comes in, multiple Final Fours, national championship in 2012, whatever. And so I've always believed that Nebraska could get back to a really high level. Now, I've said it all along. Are they going to win are they going to win 3 national championships in 4 years? I don't know if anyone is ever going to do that again in the 14 playoff era because it's going to be so tough. We now have essentially super conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. You now have 3 to 4 postseason games just if you get in. So I don't know if anyone's ever going to do it. But what I have said all along was in the NIL portal world, Nebraska can be relevant. The fan base cares. The financial resources are there. By the way, one thing about Raiola, all I've heard for the last week from angry George, it's all about NIL, blah, blah. Listen, NIL is a factor in this recruitment like it is in every recruitment in all of football, okay? But at the same time, let's make no mistake. The fact that Raiola flips like a half an hour after Carson Beck announces that he's returning, that feels pretty clear to me. That Raiola wanted to go to a place where he's not demanding anything. He's not demanding to start. He's not demanding to play, but that he wants an opportunity to see the field as a freshman. By the way, Georgia shouldn't put him on the field as a freshman. Carson Beck might be the Heisman Trophy favorite coming into next year. Just went 12-0 in the regular season. But at the same time, it was about playing time. It was about opportunity. I'm sure NIL at least played a role, but I'm also sure it's probably to some degree that he also knows that I'm going to have playing opportunities. If it clicks here, I can be a legend. Like think about last year, right? Think about Arch Manning. Remember, Arch Manning, a big part of the reason he went to Texas, he was like, in theory, I'm going to redshirt my first year, and then I'm going to be the guy that leads us through the tunnel when we get into the SEC. Now it's changed. Quinn Ewers is there. He might stay for another year. But the idea was, I want to be a legend. I want to take this program to another level in a new conference. And I think that's part of Dylan Raiola's plan as well. Go to Nebraska, bring them back, maybe get them into that 12-team playoff and leave, and maybe one day get my jersey hung or my number put up there alongside my father's. And so all of these played a factor. All of these played a role. I can't wait till he does his first interview. Maybe by the time you listen, he already has. But I can't wait to see what he has to say about why Nebraska, why now. But one thing I've said, in the portal NIL world, Nebraska is going to be a great spot. Great facilities, great resources, great finances, and you're going to be able to get the high school guys, but also it's going to be a good spot for the guys that don't quite make it in some of the other places. So I think it's great for Nebraska, and I'll be blunt. I think it's great for college football as well. Listen, I know that the most annoying conversation in college football is, well, the sport is great when the sport is better when this program is great or good or whatever. Okay. What I would say is college football is awesome, no matter who's good and who's bad. There was a 10-year time when Alabama wasn't very good and the sport was still awesome. LSU had a few down years. The sport was still awesome. Florida stinks right now. The sport is still awesome. Nebraska hasn't been good in a while. The sport is still awesome. But at the same time, I do think there is going to be something really cool if this thing can get rolling with Matt Rhule. And I do believe it is going to get rolling with Matt Rhule, and I believe this is the first big step. Listen, let me say this too. I said it before. I've always believed that Nebraska can potentially get back. I've also believed that Matt Rhule is the right guy to do it. By the way, you can find this video. If you go to the most popular videos on this Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, about a year ago, I did a video saying that Matt Rhule should be the guy, and I'm so glad it worked out. But as I get to know more about this guy, I don't know Coach Rhule personally. I just love everything that he's about. Building it internally, building it with the high school guys. Yes, we're going to dabble in the portal, but it's about culture. It's about accountability. And I know every coach says that, but Matt Rhule has like a 3-program track record that this thing works. Built it overnight at Temple, built it overnight at Baylor, and now he's doing it at Nebraska. And so I can't wait to see what the next steps are. I can't wait to see who comes along for the journey with Dylan Raiola, because I know a lot of people are saying, oh, he'll just be in the portal in a year from now. Listen, I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't think Malachi Nelson was going to be in the portal a year ago. I didn't think Dante Moore was going to be in the portal a year ago. But what I will say, if it clicks with Dylan Raiola, if he ends up being the starter going into his sophomore year, I can't wait to see what kind of recruiting class they put together around him, because this is a guy. The quarterback is always the Pied Piper in recruiting. Now, I know it's a little late for 2024, but you get into 2025, you're an elite wide receiver, you're an elite offensive lineman, you're an elite defensive player. You want to go somewhere where you know who the quarterback is for the next 2 years and you know you have a chance to win? Nebraska is going to be that spot. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. I'm not saying they're Michigan today. I'm not saying they're Alabama today or even Georgia today. What I am saying, though, is this thing is so obviously trending in the right direction, and I can't wait to see what the next steps are. And this does feel different, by the way. I know what a lot of people say, oh, Nebraska, they've had their highs and lows. It's like last year, I mean, listen, year one, they're 5-7, but they were 5-3 at one point. Rhule had them going in the right direction. It didn't work out in the end, but they're going to be improved next year. They're going to make a bowl game next year. And I just think the talent that you're going to be able to bring in around this guy is going to be so fun to follow. You know, it's going to be the most fun for Nebraska fans. All of a sudden now, April, May, June, when you start having those campus visits, those summer camps, it's going to be fascinating to see who they get. So I'm so excited. I'm so interested. I'm just excited for Nebraska fans. Like, enjoy this moment. Let me say this, Nebraska fans. Don't let the negativity get to you. There's going to be Georgia fans and other fans. Oh, he's going to transfer. Enjoy this moment. You guys deserve it. And I am so excited to see what's next. From the Georgia perspective, I'll quickly say, you don't need me to tell you, Georgia's going to be just fine, right? Like, Georgia is a monster. Kirby Smart is a monster. He is going to get it. He's got it rolling at an elite level. And I'm not worried that they lost a 5-star quarterback. This is a team that has won 2 national championships with a former walk-on at quarterback. Carson Beck, as I said, I think is going to be in the short list of Heisman favorites coming into next year. So, yeah. I think that's all for my Dylan Gabriel thoughts at this moment. A couple things. One, I'll take some time. I'll reflect on Wednesday's Aaron Torres pod with some more, just overall thoughts on everything. Also, by the way, Nebraska fans, in the AT Media store, that's me, Aaron Torres, we just put up a new Nebraska shirt you are going to want to get your hands on. So click the link in the show description. New era, new rules. You already know what it means, baby. Make sure to check it out and subscribe. And that's it, man. I'm so fired up for Nebraska fans. So fired up for signing day. More content coming. Appreciate everybody's support. Make sure to subscribe.